Good evening, everybody, or good day, depending on where you are. Welcome to Stadia Arcadia channel, and this is the second episode of the Let's Talk Stadia show. Today, I have my good friends here, Chase and Duncan, as you can see. Feel free to say hey, guys.
Hey, guys. You had to do it.
Duncan did the simple one. How's everybody doing? Hope everybody's doing well on Sunday. And for those of you that are celebrating the Super Bowl Sunday. So,
indeed, and as a Brit, obviously it's not something that's huge over here, but we're very aware when it's on, and a lot of people do stay up to watch it. I think for me, I probably spend more time worrying about like all the crazy adverts and the halftime show than the sport itself. I did try to get into NFL for a while, but it's crazy difficult for somebody who knows nothing about it.
Yeah, it's true. It's everyone calls it what is it? Hand is it hand egg? Is that the term?
Yes, I've been calling it hand egg just to get some bites. It's not football. You don't use your foot.
I mean, I'm not even a football fan or soccer fan to you guys. Some sports for me, if they don't have a motor on it or it's not two guys knocking shit out of each other, is probably not of much interest to me. There we go. So I did buy the new platform, so it's a little bit different from streams I've done before for the guys that are thinking this looks a bit different. If you watch Chase, then you'll know exactly what this is because it's the same setup that he uses. And I've got to thank you for putting me onto this, Chase. It's super simple. You can set up literally everything for your broadcast in minutes compared to messing around in OBS for hours. Of course, it's nice. I feel spoiled with it, in all honesty. The only downside is obviously you do have to pay for it to have all the features that you get, but they are nice features.
Yeah, it's quite honestly, and I'll just keep this short, but it's probably, for me, for someone that doesn't have, a giant amount of income, to get a fancy rig, OBS, everything else, it's pretty amazing for what you get. And I think the price point, I think for some people it might be a little bit more, they may think more, on it and see if it's best for them, like their use case. But I think it works perfectly for me. And I think we're going more that direction anyways, in the future. A lot of things are going to be cloud centric. So this is just an example of that.
It's a nice fit for Stadia as well. I have to say, like you say, with it being cloud-based, it's just another sort of representation of the power of the cloud and how everything is moving that way. We are going to be requiring less and less on the hardware end in general. I mean, you look at the Chromebooks, they're hugely successful already. And again, it was one of those things where everyone's like, not sure about having to be connected all the time, but we are always connected all the time now. So
right, it's
just not an issue for me anymore. And to be honest with you, I would much rather not have to go out every few years and spend £500, £600, £700 on hardware just to keep my computer relevant and being able to do things like this, because I'm sure as time goes on and videos get more in depth, more intense, more graphical, especially when we start bringing much more gameplay sort of things into streams as well, that knowing that that's hosted not locally on my machine is quite a benefit, I think, compared to what the traditional streaming services are going to be doing.
Yeah. I just think it's the whole thing just makes the footprint. It's reduced. You don't have to worry about all of the extra layers to it. So I agree 100%.
Yeah, and I don't know about you, Duncan, but I feel like you're probably quite happy with moving towards the cloud versus pure hardware.
Yeah, I definitely am. It just makes everything a lot simpler. So it does. You don't have to worry about what you're using, or everything will just work. So when we start moving everything towards that, it's going to be everything's going to come down in price as well. The phones and everything, when that's all goes cloud centric, your phones will be just running off basically nothing, and you'll be just paying for the camera, more or less.
That's it. And I mean, I remember going back to sort of when camera phones first started to become a thing. And I remember like the top handsets at the time being about sort of, I want to say like 250 quid, and thinking like, wow, that's super expensive when I was rocking my Nokia 3210. And now we look at any phone that comes out today, they're essentially £1,000 plus for a top end phone. It's a lot of money these days. I mean, I've got an iPhone XR, and that's relatively cheap on contract compared to what a lot of them were at the time. I got it very late. I only got it about 3 or 4 months ago. But even that, I'm like, if I drop this phone, it is £1,000 paperweight, or spend £200 to repair it. It's like the cost of what a phone used to be. It's crazy. Not that we're a podcast about phones.
I was going to say that might be for another time and day.
Yeah. Guys, I just want to point out to everybody that's already here viewing, say hello, welcome to my Let's Talk Stadia series. I have just put a little ticker on the bottom there so you guys can see both Chase and Duncan's details there as well. If you don't follow these guys on Twitter, I think you definitely should be. And obviously it's a great place to see when they're going to be live and content that they're putting out as well. So please do make sure you check them out. And so today, I wanted to do this show for a couple of weeks now. It's something that we really got to talk into on Chase's show, and that was about sort of how the demographics for gamers today are, I think, a lot looser than what they used to be. But that's also because I think there are a lot more people that play games now than there ever were. I mean, certainly when I was growing up, it was considered more of a geeky kind of thing to be the guy that was into playing video games, and they weren't necessarily socially accepted. And it's definitely a generational thing. If you look at my parents, I'm sure it's probably the same for you guys, that they didn't have this so much. I mean, for a start, they had like the Ataris and the Commodores and stuff. They were the mainstream advancements in tech back in the day, and when you look at what we have now, it's very, very different. But I do think that it has shifted a phenomenal amount now, and it's way more acceptable to be into this kind of digital media than it ever has been. What's your guys' take on this?
See, I just pulled an Eddie. I'll let you take it first, Duncan.
Oh, thank you very much. Yeah, it's definitely changed a lot. I think the change actually happened probably the 360 era. Before then, things were, everybody was playing everything under the sun, and then that's where it went mainstream. Because it got affordable for a lot of people. The dad gamers started to come on board, and it just, that's when I think the change really happened for gaming and overall. And then you've also got your mobile phones, which actually pushed the market out further as well.
It's definitely a big thing. I think the mobile gaming industry is massive. And whilst I don't really play any games on my phone, I don't even think I have a single game installed on it at the moment. I can't deny that the market is huge. And I know a lot of people who are, as one of the demographics we'll get into talking, a hyper casual. That's kind of the perfect stomping ground for anybody that wants to have a game out there that isn't necessarily massively in depth. It's just something to get into, to play on a 2, 3, 4, 5 minute break, whatever you've got. I know, Chase, you're quite a fay with the mobile side. You've mentioned it quite a few times in some of your shows, so I'd like to hear your views on this.
Well, yeah, I mean, this past year we saw kind of a I don't want to say an increase, but we got to see the breakdown of that mobile gaming is now officially, by net revenue, it's the largest purchasing block out in the gaming sphere now. And because of that, it has made the landscape change. One thing just real quick that Duncan was talking about this transition from younger gamers from, I think my age block, which would be from the 80s babies, right? Moving forward into what has happened over the past 30 years, there's just been a lot of shifts in the way that gaming has moved. And I think one catalyst behind this, and I don't know if I've ever talked about this, but I know that it went from, like you said, from kind of being a background thing where some people consider it you were a geek or something else, you'd have that terminology behind it. One game that changed this for everybody, the first game was Halo. And everybody started jumping into FPS games. And then the game that really, it just took off. And it took off for everything. And that was the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare. That game changed the landscape. It pulled in people that had probably never, ever considered touching a console, coming in and playing with their friends because of the type of genre of game that it was. And then we've just seen that blossom into where we're at right now. But to go back to the mobile gaming piece, it's a vitally important purchasing block, and it's a block that I think as we go more into the next 3 or 4 and 5 years, you're going to see that there's going to be a focus on, and I've talked about this before, of phone manufacturers are not going to focus so much on localized hardware of a phone. They're going to focus on what can we leverage in the cloud and how can we get the phone to a cheaper price point to the consumer. And one company that's already doing this, we see it, is Google with the 3A XL series. And now we're going to see that this upcoming in the fall window, we're going to see that with the 4A XL and the 4A we've heard. So that's something that's going to continue to transition. And I think Stadia has a very big opportunity here with just the mobile side of the house, being able to say, hey, we know you like the Candy Crushes. We know you like the, what's another really popular game? The PUBGs. We know you like those kind of games on your mobile, but we're going to offer you the ability to also play AAA games. I think that's going to be compelling for a lot of people. I really do.
Yeah, without a doubt. I haven't had a chance to experience this yet because, as I said earlier, I have an iOS device. Therefore, none of this is available to us. And I actually still don't think we're going to see that for quite a long time, unfortunately, purely down to if Apple are even remotely thinking of streaming services, which the rumors are out there now. We don't have Chrome in any real capacity on an iOS device. It's just Safari with a Chrome wrapper on the top. And historically, they've never let anybody else put that kind of software in. They like to keep everything going through Safari. They like to keep everything within their own ecosystem. I don't know if we're going to see that super soon. And
I disagree 100% in that, because you can already stream on your phone with Shadow. Shadow's already there. Then you've also got the xCloud and the massive elephant in the room, and they've already said they're up and running. Their iOS is gone. So I think the first one, it's going to be a race between them two on who's going to get the first iOS, and the iOS app's going to be massive.
Without a doubt, if they release iOS, I think you're looking at quite a big jump again in player base, because a lot of people still like iPhone. I actually moved away from them for a really long time and went to Android. And recently I was like, you know what? I haven't had an Apple phone for a while. I do think they're very sleek and they look good. So that made me do it. But at the same time, I was torn between that and the Pixel because I knew Stadia was coming. And I was like, it would be awesome to have that because I know the support's going to be there first. And I sometimes look back and go, I made the wrong choice based on that. I also haven't tried xCloud yet because I don't have an Xbox anymore for a start. And when it first started, I believe you had to stream from your Xbox to the device. I'm not entirely sure about this. I read a few things and got really confused by it. But I do think that when we have the ability to take this with us anywhere, if you're on a commute somewhere and you're not the driver, the fact that you can just pull up any game in your library and just be like, well, I've got 20 minutes. I'm not talking to anybody. I'm on a busy tube. I'm just going to stick my headphones in and I'm just going to have a blast for 10, 15 minutes. That's something that's never existed before. And developers have never had to worry or think about this as a thing before. But I also think this is where we're going to see a slight shift in maybe certainly the last decade. I think multiplayer games have been the huge selling point of pretty much every franchise that exists. And I think we're going to start seeing some more narrative-based stuff come through because people are going to want to have that time to themselves again a little bit, where they don't have to worry about constantly being in a lobby waiting for people to ready up or whatever, or they've got 10 minutes and they know that if they jump in that game, people get annoyed when you dip out before finishing a round and that sort of thing. Again, that's going to completely depend on what demographic people are in. If you're a hyper casual, you're not going to care about that. But if you consider yourself a hardcore gamer and you're playing a game where people are playing from sort of desktops, could be crossing over with the people that are playing it on a mobile device, and there's going to be clashes in that.
I think what's challenging with this conversation, and it's a good one to be had, because we really do need to talk about these different blocks, because Stadia really does have to appeal to all of them. And I hope I'm not jumping too far ahead here, Tommy, but I think the mobile gaming market is a market that's untapped, and that's the hyper casual market primarily. It's an untapped market when it comes to the type of games that Stadia is going to bring to the table. And I think the difference between, so you were talking about xCloud, right? So xCloud is a hybrid system. It's, you either have the option of, if you own the Xbox, you can do remote play, which already exists on PlayStation. I mean, it's a thing that isn't cloud gaming. And I have to be really specific about this, because that is not considered cloud gaming. Yes, it is you play remotely off of a console, but that's not what the true definition of cloud gaming is. Cloud gaming is going to be for the folks that don't have that console in their house and want to play directly from a server. That would be what I would consider more so the cloud gaming, that cloud gaming demographic. So it's going to be interesting to see. And we don't know this for sure. And I do want to be fair. We don't know if the hyper casual market is going to gravitate to this fully 100%. That is still an unknown. If it's marketed correctly, I think it's compelling, because these are the folks that say, I don't want to buy, I mean, this is why they game on a mobile device. I don't want to buy a console. I don't want to buy a piece of hardware. I just want to play on a device that is my centric device, because most of us treat our mobile device as our tablet, our phone, in some cases, some people even use it to do their productivity. I know that's crazy to hear, but it's true. I mean, I see people all the time with notes, and they have the keyboard attachment and they're using their note to do work product. So some people choose to just be tied to one device. So the question really comes down to, can Stadia do enough to make it compelling to that market? And that's still an unknown question.
Absolutely. And I don't know what that's going to be like. I don't think anybody can tell us what that's going to look like in a year's time. It could go both ways. We could see that initially, I think the impact is going to be massive, as in probably almost as big as most other routes into it, purely because everyone's going to want to try it. They're going to be like, well, I don't need to be in front of any decent kind of screen. I just need an internet connection and a method of input, be it whatever controlled choice you decide to use. But I personally think it will be the last resort way of playing for me. If I've got a monitor in front of me or a TV in front of me, I'm going to pick those over playing it on my phone, purely because I don't have a huge phone. I remember having a much bigger phone than this, and even just watching sort of TV on it or Netflix or whatever, it's not an ideal situation. You make the most of it if that's all you've got, but if you've got better options to do it, you're going to pick those. So that's still something for me. And I think this is where something we haven't got into yet, but we certainly will be very shortly, is these demographics that we're going to list kind of wide buckets of people into here. And I'm sure people are going to disagree with a lot of how we see these. But the term that I'm sure you didn't coin it, but I never heard it before, and that was the mid-core gamer. I certainly feel like that describes my demographic these days, and I think those people are going to want to have sort of the best experience that they can have without necessarily worrying about all of the different levels of tech and entry points that there are. They just want the standard. I just want to play a game. I've got my PC, I've got my TV, I've got a big tablet, something that's just a more easy to adopt, I guess, platform of playing on. But what do you guys think?
I'll jump in here about your phone not being your number one way of playing. Have any of you seen the Surface Duo?
No, I haven't.
It is a split-screen phone which Microsoft are building, and they have showed it off using xCloud as well. Basically, think of the 3DS. That is basically what they're sort of going. The controls are going to be on the screen, but it is going to be that sort of thing. So they're already thinking ahead towards that. So that is this playing anywhere market is going to take off. So
I just thought I'd bring this up quickly while you're saying it, in case people haven't seen it as well, and just sort of scroll through it.
On their advertising video, what they showed when they were launching it, they flipped it over into like a 3DS. It looks like a 3DS when it goes over to the side, and xCloud is on there as one of the features that they're touting for it. That's the tablet that they've launched as well. That's the Neo tablet. So everything is, they're really going for that sort of market with the two screens. So the answer, I can't say his name, sorry, I'm awful with names. Rigor, where's this thing? Yes, I think it's going to be on there. So that's the phone there. You take it in, you flip it into like a 3DS, and you're going to be able to play on the go. It's some size of beast, like, but it's going. That's what they're going for.
Yeah, I've never seen this before, and that is.
I think it looks wonderful, to tell you the truth. And then they're going to switch it over to the side and demo xCloud. It only flashes up for a wee bit, but this is the way they're already thinking ahead for this sort of stuff.
Yeah, and this is what we need to see. Obviously, if this is the sort of the market that people want to get into, we're going to need to see hardware that really makes the most of these services.
Yeah,
I know Samsung did something, not this, but they did something similar, didn't they, with their sort of foldable phone, and we've seen a lot of problems with that very quickly. A lot of people were bending them; the screens just stopped working. Obviously, it's very new tech.
Right there. It just flashed up there, the xCloud bit there. Yeah, but this has actually got a hinge on it.
Yeah, and that's it. That looks a lot more robust. And I think the other thing is people are getting way more used to doing a lot more work on their phones. And the size thing, I think, is becoming less of an issue on the whole. I mean, certainly something that big, you're not going to be carrying that in your pocket, which maybe your back pocket, and then they're just going to get sat on and people are going to moan then. But yeah, realistically, that's not anybody else's issue. If you don't have the ability to carry that device around with you, you wouldn't do that with a Switch, would you? You're not going to put the Switch in your pocket and walk around and then complain because you sat on it. That's who are you complaining to? You sat on it. It's your fault.
Yeah, it was just to show that the market is. I think that's one of the reasons Microsoft is going, because of the xCloud of that. I think that's going to be absolutely massive money. But again, when we get into the cloud, it should all start to come down, and because you don't need as powerful stuff.
Well, I do want to say something in regards to this, that I think we have to be really careful. And I don't want to, where Duncan's coming from, Duncan is absolutely correct that again, mobile gaming and the mobile market is going to be tremendous potentially to the success of this thing. But I think Stadia, again, and I've kind of hammered this point home when I've talked about this with the different demographics of gamers out there, they've got to be really careful to not just get sucked into only one lane. They're going to have to market to everybody. And the mobile market, the reason that I think it's important, and it's the most important one to talk about, is because it's untapped. It has not truly been tapped into by the platform holders in regards to AAA titles. So what we just saw with that Surface, you called it the Duo, where it opens up and it provides that as an option, that is going to be a compelling piece for folks. But there's also the flip side of this, where you've got folks that are going to be in their homes and want minimalistic hardware and want the option to be able to play on something that's not a giant box that's just sitting and collecting dust. So again, I'm not trying to change the subject here, but I just want to throw that in there because I think it's important to remember that we while we look at each of these things, it's got to be a collective push by them. They cannot get segmented and just solely focus on one versus the other, or they're going to be in trouble.
Yeah, I agree. It's going to be a tricky path for everybody to break this boundary down and give these tools to people that have never existed before for services that this kind of service, cloud gaming as its own service, has never existed before. You rightly said something before about PlayStation Now being something similar to what Xbox, the hybrid system, sort of offered. They gave half of that away with PlayStation Now, and I haven't owned a PlayStation since the PS2. But what did interest me was the fact that I could have PlayStation Now without even having a PlayStation. You can play it directly through your PC. And that's, in fact, how I got to play The Last of Us, which it's a game I really wanted to play, but I didn't want to go out and buy a PlayStation purely to play one game. I'm sure there would have been other games that I would have wanted to play alongside of that afterwards, but spending that much money out to play a title that you want to play isn't something that I can afford to do. And I have had an Xbox since the 360 days, and with the advent of Stadia, I no longer own anything other than a PC and Stadia, and that was a conscious decision. I felt like cloud-based media is the only way forward for me. I don't see how any other service can realistically keep up with what you can do with the cloud, and then I used to consider myself quite a hardcore gamer, and that was based on I didn't have a relationship, I didn't have children, I didn't have to think about other things. My time was my own, and I used to choose to spend a lot of that by playing video games. And constantly trying to keep up with the PC was almost as much as a nightmare as it is today. I mean, you look at the NVIDIA graphics cards that are available now, they bring out the 10 series. Everyone goes mental about them. The prices go through the roof, mostly because of the whole mining incident. But then a year later, they bring out the 20 series. And then a couple of months after bringing out the 20 series, they bring out a revamped version of the 1060 and then the supers. And now we're looking at the 30 series. It's incredible that anybody can keep up with that level of tech, because people do. They want the latest things. They want to be able to play everything in the best way possible. But for me, that would mean spending enough to have bought a few cars in the space of 2 years. It doesn't achieve that much more than what we can do with the cloud, and this is in its infancy. But I know there will be people out there that will argue with me that that is the purebred way of playing any game today. Do you guys play PC as well as, or do you more stick to your consoles as well as Stadia? Shadow.
There is a PC right there. That is Shadow. That is all it is. You get your USB ports in the back. You get your Ethernet. As you can see, I'm doing this blind here. There's actually USB 3 there as well. You've got your headset and everything. So that is a full PC right there for £15 a month now.
Yeah,
in the cloud.
I think that was a good move by Shadow. I tried Shadow out when I was waiting for Stadia, and it was at the old price, which I can't quite remember what it was now. Was it 30 quid? Yeah. And it worked fine. I didn't have any input lag issues or anything like that. And the download speeds were, I think I noticed probably more than anything else, because where I was then before we moved here, I had a downstream of roughly 39 meg. So to download a 40 gig game was no fun. It was a real joke. And then when you use that service, you log on, you treat it as you've just remote access to your own PC, and all of a sudden you're seeing a gigabit connection. It was something different. I've never experienced anything like that before, and it was good. But it was an expense again that at the time I couldn't afford realistically on top of it, plus purchasing prices of the actual titles that I wanted to then play on top of it as well. Yeah. And I already knew that Stadia was coming, and that was a thing for me. I was just like, this could be good, but I feel like Google have got something a bit better in terms of pricing point and things like that for me. Have you tried Shadow, Chase?
No, and it's something that I've had a couple people kind of say to me, "Hey, it's something that you should check out." So me personally, your original question was, do I game at all on PC? And the answer is no. I'm not a PC gamer at heart. I never really have been. I've always been either on a console or on a handheld device. That was the Game Boy, or I'm trying to think back in the day. What was it? The Sega? God, I can't even think of it right now. There was a Sega handheld that existed back in the day. Which one was it?
Sega Game Gear, was it? Game Gear?
It might have been the Game Gear. Yeah. Now that I think about it, I think it is, because there was a Sonic game that was bundled with that when they first put it out to the market, and everyone was like, "Oh, this is going to kill." Again, when we talk about Xbox versus PlayStation, all this stuff back then, it was, "Oh, this is going to kill the Game Boy," right? So, but that's nostalgia. But anyways, yeah, I've never been a PC gamer at heart. So for me, though, I will say this now, going to the Shadow point. This is the thing that I think, again, is going to be very interesting. So I'm going to break this into just two quick pieces. One, for somebody that's out there trying to decide whether or not they want to spend, either 800 American dollars, or it'd be 900 quid for you guys, the equivalent, right? In pounds. Someone, if you tell them that they could also get a PC in the cloud, and if they don't have a data cap and all they have to spend is $15 a month, that could be compelling. And it really just depends on the person's situation. Now, on the flip side of this, I think Shadow's in a really difficult spot. I'm going to tell you why. They are trying to do kind of a segmented business model. One side of it is, we are a PC in the cloud. The other side of it is, we are a gaming platform in the cloud. I think there's going to come a point very shortly where they're going to have to make a very tough decision of what is really going to be their focus, because I don't think it's both. I think that they are going to be in a really tough spot to try to market to everything. And my guess, and I could be wrong on this, I think you're going to see them abandon the PC side of the house, and I think they're going to focus really heavy into the gaming side. And we've already kind of seen that in one of their announcements with their pricing structure. When that came out, they then doubled down and then went back and said, you know what, we're actually even going to offer it at a lower price. So I think the movement that we're seeing from them lends me to believe, from a business lens, that they are going to focus solely on the gaming side of the house. But that's going to be a very interesting company to watch. Same thing with GeForce Now. There was that article that just came out the other day about their pricing model, and theirs is a little confusing. I'm not going to lie, because they're doing it by sessions.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to be compelling. So.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, especially on their version of base, if you like, that it's limited to an hour session. That's, I know you're paying for it, but you're still going to have to purchase the games, right? So you're not going to get the games for free. So they're going to buy a game, and they're going to limit you to playing that game for an hour. How long do you then have to wait to start the next session? Can you just start it again instantly?
Unclear.
That's what their problem is. They don't have the secondary market. You buy the game on Steam, you don't pay them at all. So that's why their base is rubbish, to be fair, because they're getting no cut anywhere. You have to pay the money to actually play on. So their free version is good because it is free.
Yeah.
Because you're playing the games you've already bought, but they have no way to make money unless you subscribe. So that's why I don't understand it at all. I can't see where they're going to be making the money.
It's almost like they've created their free version to persuade people to use the paid version, which is a terrible marketing plot.
It's really a disconnected, and I'm sorry this is almost like throwing a hand grenade into a conversation that we're having that had kind of got us a little bit away from your original talking point. But I just think it's a really disconnected business model. It doesn't make sense. And again, this comes back to, this is why we need competition in this space. Because I guarantee you, and I bet you in 2 or 3 months, they're going to come back out and they're going to change it again, because that is not going to work for people. No one is going to go and say, I'm going to spend $5 to be limited. And we don't even know what the time is for the $5 model. Is it 3 hours? Is it 4 hours? What does even priority mean? Like, there's so many just very loose pieces of language. Like when I read that announcement, I did this on a live stream the other night. I was just like, this language that they're using is just so ambiguous. Like the ambiguity that was in it is just not good. And especially in a market where you see this with Stadia. I mean, let's be fair to Stadia. Gamers want specifics. They do not want to walk into something and go, okay, well then tomorrow, now all of a sudden something's changing. That's not going to fly. And I think NVIDIA is going to find out real quick. They've been in this beta phase, but if they go towards the full rollout, I think they're going to get hit pretty quick and realize that this isn't going to work.
Yeah, they are in a tough spot because, like you say, even if you compare what we have with Stadia now, this is the premier platform for cloud gaming. It's the first one to do it. It was the first release. All right, it's not open to the public, but neither is any other version other than Shadow. But it's different again. And just to quickly touch on something you said, Chase, about them aiming at the sort of the gaming side of it, which I agree with you, by the way. It very much seems like that's the route that they want to pin down now. Whereas before they had this service that I feel gaming was sort of an afterthought. I feel like that was probably initially sort of looked at. Actually, the reason I found out about it was I know a guy who does a lot of render work and he uses Shadow because his PC is horrendous at doing that. So he'd just go and rent one of theirs, do everything on that, and then just render it there. He had full use of his computer to do whatever he wanted while he's waiting. And it was significantly cutting down his time and effort. And that's something which I guess is too much of an obscure market to build that kind of product on. Not enough people need that. A lot of people that work in that industry already have access to computers that are built for that. They are built purely to render a lot of work. And they would do it probably inevitably quicker than what you're going to get out of Shadow, because I don't know if they've upgraded to the RTX line cards or not now. They have.
That's what the updates are, and you're going to get ray tracing and whatnot. And just to add on, they are focusing on gaming now. If you go into their mobile app, you can click onto a game instead of having to go through Steam and load up the full Windows experience. You can just go into whatever game you want from a click of a button now.
So again, they've kind of taken that idea from what Stadia did, the ability to just hit play. Ideal. There we go. I'm in my game. I'm not loading anything. Well, they still load, don't they? But it's still better than having to lug a console around with you. But I mean, that's besides the point, because it's still a worse version of what we have with Stadia, which is, well, worse isn't the right word. I shouldn't say that because that's going to be opinion based. It's a less fluid version of gaming than Stadia can offer us. So I do just want to quickly take a minute, because I realize we're like nearly 40 minutes in and we barely even touched on what the actual subject was. And that was that we started a poll, and a great conversation took off between our friend Duncan here, and I'm a horrendous person because I've forgotten the person that it was, so I'm just going to go and find them quickly. But essentially, we were discussing game demographics, what people feel they fit in, where they fit in that, be it a hardcore gamer, a mid-core gamer. I listed them as a filthy casual or other, and asked that if you didn't feel that either of those three tags was right for you, that you let us know what you feel does suit you. And it was Sigila, by the way, that you were having a fantastic discussion with.
Sorry, I just want to be fair, it was civilized. We had our both different points of view, and for once on Twitter it was a real good conversation and didn't get into name calling or anything, so it was actually really, really good.
It was a healthy debate, absolutely. There was no telling somebody that they're wrong. It was just you and Sigila, and I put in the odd comment about it was all constructive. Nothing was just it's this way because I said it is. Everything that was sort of thrown up within that, it was they were valid points. They're opinions, but they're valid points still, that then they're backed up. And you're right, you very rarely see that kind of discussion take place on a social media platform today. You generally get told this is the way it is, and if it isn't, then go kill yourself, because that's just generally all we get today. Or I'm going to find where you live. In the old days of Xbox, the threats were real. But I think Stadia and cloud gaming as a whole is going to change the demographic quite significantly. And that's not saying that hardcore gamers are going to be any less hardcore. I think some of the points that you made yourself, Duncan, throughout that were very relevant. And I think what I'd like to do right now is just to get your take on what you think makes a hardcore gamer.
I don't think there's hardcore gamers anymore. So how would you describe what a hardcore gamer is? I'll throw it straight back, because I think the term is null and void now, more or less.
You take the next part.
I'm going to have to disagree with Duncan. And we always have very healthy debates on stuff. So this is going to be one of those ones where we're going to have to depart. They still exist. And I'm going to tell you how I know they exist. You see very often, and I'm going to use Stadia as the catalyst for this conversation, because that's what we're talking about, right? They like to, and not all of them, so I want to be very careful, because I don't want people, when I say this, people like to twist words. They like to twist context of things. They like to twist the narrative, and that's not what I'm doing here. But they have tried to say that their purchasing preferences and their what they think is an ideal game system matters more than the next person. And these are the folks that are playing games. What I would consider a hardcore gamer is going to be someone that is spending more than $400 a year on games. And they are playing at least 400, sorry, here I am bad with math again, 40 hours a week or more on games. That they're playing that much. So I think they exist. Now, I don't know if this is what Duncan is trying to say. I don't know if we're starting to see where there's a merging of different demographics together, but there is a block of folks out there that they're very opinionated. They're very, very opinionated. I guess that's the right way to say it. They feel like their opinion is more important than what we were talking about as like a mid-core gamer or a hyper-casual, and therefore they should not be part of the conversation when it comes to Stadia. Or they use the argument that that demographic isn't bigger, or it isn't they're not as important as their demographic. I'm going to stop there because there's a point I want to make, but I don't want to make it here. I'd rather make it when we get to the other demographic parts, because I think there's a point to be made to kind of tie that all together.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I think I know where you're going to go, so that's probably a good move. And I think I tend to agree more with Chase on this, only because I think for me, a hardcore gamer now is somebody that we see less of, probably for us, because we have responsibilities, and therefore we don't have the ability generally to chuck 40, 50 hours a week into playing video games. And I don't think it's just a time thing. I don't think that's the qualification for being a hardcore gamer. I think you need to be somebody that is buying pretty much all the titles that come, all the AAA titles that come out as they come out, not waiting for them to go on sale and that sort of thing. I think they are the people that want to keep up with the latest technology, be that the latest console as it comes out, or the latest graphics cards as they come out. It's also using a different level of hardware. So typically for me as a PC player previous to Stadia, I had a mid-end machine. It could play everything in 1080p Ultra, other than the original Crysis. It's still ridiculous. And my hardware level, as in peripherals and so on, my mouse is probably the most expensive piece of kit that I have to go with my PC, other than obviously monitors and things like that. But that for me wasn't because I felt like it was the best gaming mouse. It was the set of features that worked well for me. Wireless, the ability to wireless charge as well. But I do think that what I thought a hardcore gamer was now compared to what I thought they were back when I was in my early 20s is very different. I would have probably considered myself a hardcore gamer back then. Mm-hmm. If I had free time, that's what I did. I was like, right, what am I going to play? I'm going to do this. And that's all I was interested in doing. I've never even attempted to be able to do something to a professional level, which I know Sidula thought in the debate that he was very much into trying to get to a professional level of play, and that to him made him feel like he was a hardcore gamer, and that was where some of the actual discussion kind of took off from his side quite quickly, that he felt that he was very passionate because he played with people that had a similar mindset to him. It was all about the competition side of things. Whereas, obviously, if we look at a hyper casual, they don't care about competition. They might not even care about esports for the games that they love. But esports are something that's changing the landscape drastically. We're not talking about people that are traveling to China or whatever to play a tournament in whatever game they're playing for a couple of £1,000 now. We're talking about the likes of Valve's Dota 2, where the prize pools are in excess of $30 million. It's an obscene amount of money for essentially 4 or 5 days of playing a game live.
Yeah, I'll just jump in here. We'll go back. I play 40 hours a week of Clash of Clans. I stick in $400 a year into Clash of Clans. I just play Clash of Clans. Am I a hardcore gamer?
Or are you a hardcore Clash of Clans gamer?
Well, and that's fine. And I think, Duncan, you're right in trying to clarify the point. I think the intent behind it is when we say that you spend that kind of money, it's not that we're saying it's on one game. It's that it's exactly what Tommy is saying, is that it's multiple titles. So if that wasn't included in the breakdown for me, then that's I think that's a fair shout to try to provide clarification or context. Because again, I don't want people to feel like me saying that means that therefore they've done something bad. If you fall into any of these demographics that are being talked about, that's not bad. It's when you start injecting and start saying that my demographic matters more than the next. That's where I take issue. And that's where I've always taken issue, because just because you don't like that segment, or that's not even the right way to say it. Just because you may not fall in line with that line of thought, or you may not choose to purchase games in that same way, it doesn't mean that demographic doesn't matter. So I think that's where I come from on that. So, but thank you for providing the context there, Duncan, because I think that was a good shout.
Yeah. Well, sorry. See, what I see now is hardcore gamer. I think it's just no one can kind of 100% clarify it, because there's always stipulations to everybody what it means. For example, going back to that Twitter conversation I had with there you go. I've got an awful memory, and I'm awful at saying people's names. I made another example. I am a gamer who plays on easy, but I play a wide range of games. But this other person plays FIFA and drops a ton of money into FIFA, and maybe some Call of Duty as well. Which one's more hardcore? The one who's pushing themselves in FIFA and Call of Duty, or the one who's playing a load of things, but they're playing a load of things on easy? See, people will go, no, the FIFA one is, no, the other one is. I don't think you can 100% clarify now what a hardcore gamer is.
I think you're right. It's subjective, and everyone has their own view on what that is. Well,
here's what I was going to say, and I'm trying to find, and I may not be able to find it in the moment right now, but there is data research that's done by folks out in the this is actually it right here. Let me open this up while we're talking in real time, because I'm trying to remember who it was that did this, so I can try to be accurate, because I don't want to put something out there that is not accurate. So NPR has actually done some reporting on this in the past, and so has Limelight.com, which they've done a series called The State of Online Gaming, where they've defined some of these different demographics or purchasing blocks. So I think there are true definitions out there. What I think tends to happen though is, and I'll be honest, I think we're all guilty of this. And I don't know if this is what you're trying to say, Duncan, but sometimes we will inadvertently, whether we realize it or not, cast a light or cast a shadow when something may fit our conversation point or our narrative, whether we even recognize that we're doing it. But there are clear definitions of what some of these things are. And that's even where I came up with like the mid-core type of demographic, because there are some data points that exist out there in regards to this.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, it's, so I don't know if you guys have got the comments up at the moment, but the one that I have to show this one, I know this is slightly off track and I'm going to go straight back, but I mentioned go to China. It's probably the wrong thing to say, but that comment fits that quite well at the moment. It's a dangerous place to be at the moment, but I mean, it's no joke really, but obviously things are very tough for them at the moment. But hardcore gaming is extremely loose term is another one that I think it's just very difficult to put a label on anything anymore anyway, regardless of what we're talking about. Everything is so fluid these days that I don't think people like being pigeonholed anymore either, unless it can go the other way, I guess. There are definitely people out there that will go the opposite length and convince you that they are a certain demographic. It's just a tricky place to be to try and label anybody anything anymore. And I think it's one of the reasons why developers don't want to appeal to a single market unless it's a hyper casual market, because they know that a lot of the time the people that play those kind of games are never going to be interested in being a hardcore gamer in anything. They purely just want to pick up and play for a couple of minutes here and there and drop it and go back to doing whatever they were doing before. I think that's where the success of things like Candy Crush and that came from. Nothing existed like that before, where they were games for people that didn't play games. My other half constantly tells me that she doesn't understand why I play games, and yet when Candy Crush was a thing, that's what I'd find her playing. I'd be like, what are you doing? Oh, I'm just on my phone. What are you doing? Playing Candy Crush. So you don't play games, but you'll play Candy Crush, and you don't consider that a game because it's so casual that you don't really have to do anything. You're just swiping for patterns and that's it. But I mean, that just kind of goes back to what they were in the old days, right? Because before we had any kind of real graphics, you had your Pongs and things like that. These weren't games that, could you imagine telling somebody when they played Pong for the first time that Sonic was going to be a thing kind of soon? What would people have said about that? They would have been like, you're crazy. And also, why would they have been interested in it? Because it just wasn't a thing then. It's changed so much in such a relatively short period of time that I think demographics, we're really only looking at 3 now, roughly, from what we say. People that play a lot, people that play sometimes, and people that play barely.
See, I would count it more mainstream. There's the mainstream market, which is your Call of Duties, your FIFAs, because hardcore players, if we're going to call them hardcore players, will play Call of Duty, they'll play FIFA. You're casual, if you're going to go casual, we fall into that as well. I think the genres, I think people are more, I'm going to play this genre of game, and they're not going to associate themselves with, I'm a hardcore gamer or anything like that. I think gaming is now mainstream, so the terms just seem to go away. Sorry, Chase.
No, it's just here's where I divulge and I disagree. I think maybe in the way we talk about things, maybe we're choosing not to go that route. But I do want to push back on the fact that when you're looking at data, there is these segments. I mean, it exists because they're looking at purchasing blocks. And I think the reason I'm passionate about this and why I brought up the rant that I did on the This Week on Stadia podcast about it is it's purchasing blocks. You've got the demo of what they call popcorn gamers. So what are those folks? Those are the folks that just like to watch YouTube videos of people playing games. They don't actually game themselves, right? And then they may spend money on the streamer's content or the streamer's site, right? Then you have the hyper casual, which would be your mobile gamers or folks that don't invest a lot of time in games. Then you have what's called either a core gamer or a mid-core gamer. That's what the term is that they use for that. That's somebody that falls kind of in our kind of block. And I think you might even fit into that one as well, Duncan. And then you've got the hardcore gaming demographic. And again, what they're looking at is they're looking at time played and the purchasing blocks, because that's how some of these companies are choosing to decide how they market games, how they do outreach to gamers. And that really hasn't, I mean, to be fair, where we're at right now, that hasn't really changed. I mean, if you look at those purchasing blocks, they are kind of the same. They've kind of stayed the same. But I think where I maybe, and I don't know, again, Duncan, if this is the point you were trying to make, I'm trying to kind of follow the narrative that you were setting there and the table that you were setting. If you're coming at it from the place of that we're going to start seeing those segments slowly merge together because cloud gaming is going to change the landscape, I could tend to agree with you that probably is something we will see happen. I just don't know that we're there yet. And I think because this is such early days for cloud gaming, we're still thinking about physical hardware when we talk about some of this stuff. We're not fully integrated into the 5 or 7 years. I mean, I'm sure when we look back on this stream, we're all going to go, what were we talking about? That stuff doesn't matter anymore. But I think in the now, it's important to still kind of think about these things because this is going to matter with how they're going to market it. And I'm sorry I'm being so passionate about that, but it's just I'm very set in those convictions because I'm just looking at it from a business lens. But it doesn't mean that what you're presenting isn't wrong. And I think that anyone that looks at this from different pathways, I think there's a valid argument to be made. And I do think, Duncan, you've made a compelling argument of why you think that that's not important and maybe not as valid now. So I don't want to negate your points. I'm just trying to put out another lens to help people maybe look at this from a different perspective and maybe help them think through the process, I guess is the right way to say it.
Yeah, basically, it's basically what you were saying there, Chase. I'm more of, I think everything is moving. I think there will always be a segment who will always think of themselves as a hardcore gamer, 100%, and that's their opinion, and everybody's got their opinions. But I just think the mainstream market is new, and then you've got the wee ones who play. Who don't count themselves as gamers at all. Now, don't tend to Candy Crushes, as in Tommy's example there. Can I just say that is how the market is changing behind me there. That is my fiance is sitting playing Destiny 2 on Stadia. That's what has been going on here in the background. The market is completely changing now. So we'll go back to Tommy here.
Yeah, no worries. I completely agree with you, by the way. And I will go through the chat when we get towards the end because I'm very aware we haven't necessarily included a lot of people in this yet. But I am reading the comments, guys. And Charles put this one up, which do you think Stadia could bring back binge gaming is absolutely a legitimate question. And it leads on very well from the example you've just made. We're here having this podcast and your fiance is behind you, right? Well, she's not behind you, but the TV behind you is showing that she's playing Destiny right now, which is, that's it, right? I mean, I certainly wouldn't be able to get my other half to come in and play Destiny, but I do believe that there will be titles that come out that are family-orientated titles. And I've got 2 little kids myself. Neither of them are at an age where they play games yet, but the fact that at the moment we go on a long journey, I cannot do that without having a DVD player or a tablet or something to give them interest while we're traveling. Whereas in probably another year or so, I'm going to be able to give my eldest my phone and my Stadia controller and go, there you go, kid, knock yourself out, play whatever you want to play. And he's just going to be able to do that because I don't see data caps changing much for us over here. I mean, pretty much every network of mobile device now will allow you to have an endless data subscription. Some of them do it in different ways where they don't limit a certain type of media. So my other half is her contract allows anything on any kind of video stream to not come out of her data allowance. Plus, she's got a 30 gigabyte data allowance. So you essentially cannot use up your data regardless of what you want to do. And that counts for hotspot tethering as well, which is another thing that I haven't heard anybody touch on. But if you've got an endless data stream in your mobile device and you have a tablet that will allow you to play Stadia, then you can take that literally anywhere with you and have that all the time. And that's before 5G is even rolled out. That's going to change dramatically again in the future when 5G is established. And we've got downstreams faster than most people have on a PC at their house with a fiber connection at the moment. It's going to change things a lot. And I seen a great tweet. I should have liked it or something, or written it down. It was a guy the premise of his tweet was, at the moment he goes to the bathroom at work to take a 10-minute break to play his game on his phone every single day. How much more of an issue is that going to be when you can play games on your phone on Stadia and you're just like, I'm just going to sneak out of here for a quick 10 minutes and then an hour is going to have gone past and you're like, I'm going to get stuck for this.
Let me just tell you something. Not that exact example, but I have already gotten in trouble with my wife where I have walked over to the other room and I'm just like, you know what? Let me just open up Destiny real quick and let me knock out this quest. And she walks into the room and goes, "What are you doing?" And I'm like, I'm done. That's what I'm doing."
Market research.
Market research, exactly.
See, I think there's going to be fleshed out versions of these Facebook games pushed on the Stadia. The example I use all the time, and I've been harping on for a while, is Farm Together. It's a game which is like Farmville, but it's completely fleshed out. You don't have to pay to speed things up. Everything's done on the clock. It's the perfect chill out game you can play. And I've said this before, Phil Spencer, I always have to get the Phils right here. Phil Spencer is a massive fan of it as well. I can see that going on the Game Pass and being a monster hit because it's accessible for all. You can sit and just pick up the quests, just nip in for 5 minutes, or you can spend hours doing up your farm. I thoroughly recommend that game. And I would love that on Stadia because they could just link it on Facebook, link it on Twitter, come play this game, put it on Pro for a month, and I'm telling you, it would get a lot of people interested. So I think we're going to see a lot of interesting games. I think I've seen something in the chat as well, and that's another game I've been banging on about is Get Packed. I think that we know that's 100% common, and again, that's going to appeal to a complete wide range of people.
That game really is a sleeper, by the way, and I think the reason that it is it's going to bring back a return of the couch co-op, and I think that's an underestimated piece of this puzzle. That I'll be very honest, I think a lot of us, because the game isn't front and center right now, and it's not one that is on the horizon. I think Duncan's done a really good job of continuing to hammer home about this game. But it's that game has a very, it could be the catalyst for something that maybe we didn't even think about. And I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
Again, it's another one. Sorry. It's another one of them ones where, from what I've seen, it's 5 minutes. It looks like it could be a 5 minute, 10-minute level, so you can your wee quick go and work. It's one of them ones you can just have a wee quick play now and again, just because, and you know how quick it loads up in Stadia. 2 seconds, you're in and gone.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think this game is going to it's going to be one of those things that almost one of the weapons I feel like Stadia know is coming, and that's why they're not panicking about, or at least I hope this is the reason they don't panic about anything, because they just know how close they are to just flipping a switch and going, by the way, we know we've had all of this pressure, and you guys have got a lot of stick for kind of supporting us throughout this, but we're going to flip the switch now. We're going to release this whole host of features, and literally everybody that has a gaming console or any method of playing a game is going to want to be able to use this service soon. And things like that. Couch co-op. When was the last time that you played something couch co-op? Because I honestly can't remember. I mean, I know if I think back long enough, I instantly think of games like GoldenEye, but I can't think of another game that I've played like that in the last 15 years.
It's been a minute, and I think this is the thing of I'm trying to put my thought together here on this one, right? I think something that has, and I promise this is going to tie in what we're talking about. I think something that tends to get forgotten is that the gaming market is looking ahead beyond us. They're looking ahead beyond us. We're going to be, I've made this joke before, we're going to be the dinosaurs that are going to be walking the earth in a little bit. They're looking at the next generation. And this type of gaming is going to make a resurgence. I really, like, if you just look at the current generation of younger folks out there that are out there, this is right in their wheelhouse. This is the kind of stuff that they enjoy doing. And I think Stadia potentially has a hit here. If they handle it right, if they market it right, it's very interesting. It's very interesting. And I think this game, again, to go to your point, Tommy, I miss couch co-op. I miss having that opportunity to do some of that stuff. You know, I used to love doing, I've talked about this before, is Power Stone 2 was one of my favorite games on the Dreamcast. I mean, I can't tell you, I probably played enough of that game where I burned a hole through the controller because of the amount of hours that I played with my friends. And somebody could make the argument about Super Smash Brothers. You know, I mean, there's just so many examples of this, of just games that brought you together with your friends, and you just went over to their house. Imagine that your friend just comes over with their Stadia controller, no console needed. They can log into their account, and they're just in, you know, and you don't have to worry about the local hardware not being able to produce the frames. It's going to be able to do it, provided that you have a good enough internet connection. And if you do, you're fine. And
to further that even more, they're not even going to have a Stadia controller, right? So at the moment, yes, you do, but, well, depending on the way that you're playing it. But I know that my two best mates, neither of them believed that Stadia was going to work. They were both continuously telling me it's not going to happen. It's going to be over before it starts. I've still only convinced one of them to actually spend some time playing, and he's mixed bag, but he's got terrible internet. So this isn't the service for him. He has come around to my place and tried it, and he was like, well, that I can't see how anybody can tell you that that's not a thing, because it works perfectly. It works flawlessly. It's quicker than anything else he'd ever tried. The only thing that put him off was he doesn't like the control, and he is a PlayStation player through and through. So although the layout is more similar for him than the Xbox guys, it just didn't feel right for him. Now, I understand that, because I dislike the DualShock control. And that's not anything against PlayStation. Obviously, I used to have PlayStation products and I used to use it. But since the days of the 360, no, I'm going to lie, that's not true. I did not like the original Xbox control. But when they switched it up for the 360 and what they've got to now, I really like that control. The layout for me is nice. I prefer it with the additional buttons, not necessarily the Elite, but I do like that. The weightiness of it is really good. But just having that comfort of a grip makes a big difference to some people, and whatever their preference is on that. But when they've got the ability to just bring a control, as long as somebody has Stadia and you can play together, that's something, again, that it's crossing boundaries that we're not used to. It's like, oh, you got a PlayStation control, you got an Xbox control, I got a Stadia control. Oh, and we've got a Switch Pro control here, and all 4 of you can be playing one game together on 4 different pieces of hardware, and there's no kind of issues, which, I mean, you can technically do this on a PC, but it's not going to like it if you throw in all of these different setups. I mean, at the moment, to use a DualShock wirelessly, you have to emulate it, which I had no... I just took me about half an hour to get that to even work. So I just ended up like, I'm not bothering. I just plug it in. I'm sat literally 50 centimeters away from my screen. I don't care about it being wireless right now, but it's just another point of ease of access, isn't it? That's a big thing with Stadia. Everything is easy.
When I've actually, I'll tell you just a very, very quick story, is that my friend and I at work, after hours, we'd wrapped up our shift, and we actually were playing, on he was on his phone, I was on my phone. We were both in the same exact match on Destiny. And I thought that was just, again, because we just were so fixated with boxes, and it changes the game. It really does.
I got him with the controller. I may be out on my own here, but I absolutely love the Stadia controller. I use the Xbox, I use the PlayStation. I think it's just the perfect marriage of both of them. It's probably my preferred controller at the moment, even though it accidentally hit the capture button like everybody does. But barring that, I'm absolutely loving the Stadia controller.
I think it's a great minus the directional pad. I'll just leave that there.
I don't use that. I haven't really been using that.
It is my only gripe, is that to use the D-pad, you have to completely let go of a control system, and that just feels wrong to me. But it's very rare that I'll use the D-pad. I mean, obviously, for people that are playing things like Mortal Kombat or any kind of fighter, that's where that becomes a really issue. If you're playing a beat 'em up, you can't play it with a stick, not at a high level. It's just just doesn't work. I mean, it's different if you have like an arcade style pad, right? They're fine, and they're essentially the same thing, but it just feels very different. You can't get the precise diagonal movements with the thumbstick. Then that's the only thing that I think detracts from the control for me personally. And I don't play beat 'em ups, so I'm not really impacted by that. I've tried them. Obviously, we got I can't even think what it's called now. The samurai game that came with the Pro.
Samurai Showdown.
Samurai Showdown, yeah.
I played it when it came out because it was a pro game. I was like, oh, we'll play it. I went through a couple of the tutorials. I tried to find a game online and couldn't within the first couple of days. But I'm just not a big fan of them anymore. I think Mortal Kombat, I probably could be if I was playing it with friends, and more so locally rather than on online matches. That, again, comes to a bit of that nostalgia of playing games with friends when you were younger, because you couldn't do it over the internet like you can now. But I've forgotten where I was going with this now, but the D-pad. That's the only thing that I really don't really like about the control. I would prefer it to be a little bit heavier as well, but it feels robust still. It doesn't feel like it's cheap plastic, and if I drop it once, it's going to shatter. Yeah. Anything like that. Like you say, the capture button, man, I think I pressed that more than I've pressed any other button on the entire control so far, but I'll get used to it one day, right? If not, I'm going to have a whole load of cool images and not cool images to look at some point. That could be a thing, a montage of all the wrong times you took a screen capture.
Yeah, I to defend myself slightly here, I don't use a D-pad at all. So I've avoided using that. I'm just a pure control stick.
I knew Brian was going to show up, man, because me and him had this conversation, so I knew it was going to happen.
And I don't think this is. I think this is probably a sentiment that's shared by a lot of people. I think a lot of people.
Yeah, I have heard it. So, but for me, I don't use it. I avoid it like the plague, sort of thing.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the beauty. So far, they haven't released a game where they've really thrown an awful lot of control in on the D-pad. I mean, I don't know if you guys have been playing Breakpoint at all. There are controls that are tied to the D-pad on there, and some of them are, it's not game breaking, but the like rate of fire selection is a D-pad controlled thing, and you have to be holding the left trigger in so that you sort of take up aim to be able to get access to changing that. So you're in a position where you potentially might want to do something on the fly, and you have to take your thumb off the main movement stick to make that adjustment. And I know you would have to do that however they position the D-pad. The point is you're going up and above what you want to do rather than just a slight movement to the side.
I was just going to say, I mean, I've played Ghost Recon in the past and a lot of the Ubisoft games, and that's something that's been kind of universal across controllers. So for me, that one doesn't bother me as bad. I think the placement, like you said, with the sticks and the directional pad is a little difficult. I think the reason I'm a little hesitant on the D-pad is the way they've rounded the edges on it. And if you really look close at it, like if you are on that thing for an hour, you're going to have some damaged thumbs. I'm serious. Like it's not user friendly in that respect. I really hope when they do, because my guess is we're going to get some type of an elite type of controller for Stadia. They're going to do something. They're going to do something to that effect. It just makes the most sense money-wise. I hope they really think about that and find a way to maybe round those a little bit better, so that it's not as intensive on your thumb. That's just my suggestion to them. That would be the only critique I would give. And I know some people are going to want to have a controller maybe as a maybe they'll have like two options, a hybrid of there's the one that has the current layout, and then they do one that's more along the lines of the Xbox layout at some point. Because I know some people have actually been talking about that on Reddit. I've actually seen that talked about a lot. There's a lot of people that are like, please, if you do an Elite controller in the future, give us two variations of joystick layouts where we can choose which one we want. And I don't know how feasible that is money-wise, but it is something that people are talking about. So
I guess the worry you have from a business point then is that if 80% of the people go down one route, is it worth continuing for the 20%? Or do you just drop it and sort of say, yeah, okay, you know what? We've listened to you guys. The majority of you have told us that we could have designed this nicer for you. And I mean, that's not a bad thing. If you put it to the people and the majority of your player base tell you, no, that feels better. The people that like the original are not gonna dislike the other one. It's a bit of getting changed, but realistically everything else is going to stay the same, right? They're just going to swap out the D-pad and the left thumbstick. It's not going to be a dramatic change to the layout. The remaining buttons would stay the same, I would think. I also think we are going to see a different control, whether or not it's official by Google, or we get some form of Mad Cats or Razer or somebody comes along and goes, well, we've done it for everything else, so why not do it for this? But on the whole, I really like the controller, and I guess this does actually kind of tie into what the theme of this show is about, because again, if you're a hyper casual, are you going to care at all about the control as long as it works? Because if you're not playing really intense games, I don't think this becomes an issue again, because if you've got time on your side and it's not a knee-jerk reaction to have to make that control change, it's not really an issue. I think it's for people that spend more time in it. And as you said, if you're playing something like Mortal Kombat or Samurai Showdown and you play it for a good session and you end up with a sore thumb because of playing that game, and not in a repetitive movement kind of way, but actually like an abrasion almost, right? That's got to be a real issue. People are going to stop playing that game on that control.
That's what my fear is, and I don't want to see them go into a place where now we're going to be butting heads in the community. Like, that's not the intent behind it. I think it's more of just they need to just consider when they do the next variation of the controller, that's something that is a easy fix. It's not something that would be over the top. They could easily recraft the way that D-pad is it's shaped, how it sits there on the controller. I think it's an easy fix. I don't think it's a major design flaw. Probably 95% of the rest of the controller is absolutely fine. It's perfect. To me, I love the controller. Aside from that, I think it's probably like Duncan said, it's probably my favorite controller in that respect. And that's just one minor gripe. It's not the end of the world. Let me put it that way.
Yeah, and I noticed actually something else that I thought of, which we've got just here. I think the triggers need to be a bit heavier. Yeah, again, I agree with that. I think, sorry to go back to Breakpoint, but one of the features that is built in Breakpoint is that sort of like a half press of the trigger is sort of your akin to holding the left or right thumbstick in, and where you hold your breath and you focus your aim. And I don't find that I can do that very easily every time. Like occasionally I'll overshoot it and then I have to sort of slow out. And when you're tracking a moving enemy and that's your mechanic for holding your breath and you can't just get to that instantly, that doesn't feel very good. And it's a bit of a disconnect. Whereas in a traditional sense, you'd be playing with whatever your control is and you click a button or hold and click that button to hold the breath and focus. That's a lot more control driven than what they've done. And I actually prefer the idea of it being done on the trigger and you just slowly squeeze rather than just go for the full squeeze. But they're not heavy or sensitive enough that you can firmly control that. And I think that's something that is potentially an issue, because we all know that regardless of what controller you use, after a good time, maybe a year and a half or so of playing on it, these things get worse. They wear. So are we going to potentially get a year down the line and find that all of the Founder and Premier Edition controllers are actually now suffering from the lack of control? I've had it on several Xbox controls whereby bumpers either stop working or the triggers are the things that just don't work properly anymore, and you're either fully on or you're fully off. There is nothing in between them anymore. And I mean, it's not the end of the world. You buy another controller. If you've had it for a year and you've used it for a year, then
yeah, I agree.
You've got the time out of it.
I wanted to throw this in here, and I wanted to wait till we got a little bit further along to make this point. And this goes back to something about the where we were talking about the segments of the demographics, right? The gamers. I think that one thing that, again, to go back to what we were talking about in the beginning about this hardcore gaming demographic piece, is the argument that I saw that was made recently is that because they are a recurring purchaser and they purchase games more frequently, their opinion should matter more. My rebuttal to that was, okay, that's fine, but let's look at the actual numbers. Okay, net per capita year to year, annum. And when you look at the Call of Duties and the FIFAs, right? That one game alone. Let's just throw in the other game into this. Let's say it's a FIFA. That revenue that is generated makes up for those annual purchases throughout the year, off of just that purchasing demographic that only buys the 2 to 3 games a year, which are the Call of Duties, the FIFAs, and the Maddens. So where the recurring purchases are a major purchasing block and they are very important, they're not the only revenue driver that these companies are looking at, specifically the publishers and the platforms, because they see that, okay, that hyper casual, again, not saying trying to play one versus the other, but just, again, the purchasing block. That purchasing block buys these 2 to 3 games consistently a year. And this is one of our major, when we look at our revenue ledger, this is one of our major drivers of revenue. So I think this goes back to the point I was trying to make, that's why none of these demographics matter more than the other. They are all important. They all matter from a business perspective. They all matter when it comes down to the dollars and cents of this thing. And that is the part that I wanted to just throw that out there again to kind of bring that point together of each one of these have their own important role to play when it comes to Stadia.
$800 million is what FIFA made in microtransactions for their FIFA 2017.
Say that number again, Duncan, because I think that needs to set in.
800 million in over the whole year.
That's an annum figure. That is
yes.
That is for the year,
and that's all.
That's not even the game. That's just the transaction in the game.
In game, and that's a Forbes report. I'll chuck that to you here. It's nuts.
That's insane. Like say, when you take in the fact that has nothing to do with the number of copies that they've sold, that is pure unadulterated profit after the game has been purchased.
And again, and I don't want to. I just want to focus in on this. That is every purchasing block right there. That number is taking into context everybody we've talked about. You're potentially, and I actually minus one demographic because they don't always purchase games, but the popcorn gamer, the hyper casual, the mid-core, and the hardcore, all of those folks are in that $800 million number. And I will bet you if you were to have them segment the numbers out by the purchasing preferences here, you're going to see that hyper casual market is going to be the larger percentage that actually spent the most out of that demographic. It isn't going to be the hardcore or the midcore. And I'm not saying that to say that one isn't more important than the other. The point I'm pointing out is you can't come from that purchasing block and say that hyper casual market doesn't matter. It absolutely does. And this number just validates it. I would love to see, and I don't know if we will ever see this necessarily from publishers or platform holders, if they'll be willing to share those numbers, but I would love to see them because they have this data. They know who the purchasers are. They know what blocks they come from because that's how they target their advertising. They know. So I would love to see that data because I think we would be really shocked to see who really is that larger purchasing block. And then just to, again, bring that point home that every single one matters. Once you lose one, that 800 million drops. Once you lose the other, that 800 million drops. So, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, go on, Duncan.
See, this is where I think the terms get really, really muddled. See, I count FIFA as a mainstream game, Call of Duty as a mainstream game, because everybody buys it. It's like your soaps and TV. It's your bread and butter sort of game. And just to bring it on to a bit of Stadia here, this is why one of the reasons why I think Stadia is going to be free. I knew the free-to-play games are going to be free on Stadia is because it's just going to have all this trickle-down stuff, but that's slightly off topic there. But 800 million a year in just microtransactions is just a crazy number. And most of them, I would say the vast majority of them are going to be the ones who only buy FIFA or Call of Duty, the 1 or 2 game a year people.
And just to touch on that, this is also from Forbes as well, which is the best-selling games of the last decade. So it's a top 20. And if you just take a quick look at how Call of Duty dominates over 50% of that. And
that's just the US, sorry.
Yeah, exactly. And also, that doesn't even feature FIFA. So when you think of the players that are existing within the Call of Duty universe, what kind of money are they spending, man? They've always had sort of player packs and things like that to unlock extra aesthetics and stuff as well. Microtransactions are a real thing, and as much as I'm sure most people don't really like them because they're just a bit of an annoyance, I find now. I feel like they don't offer you anything other than the customization options, which are great, but you used to get customization as part of playing a game. These days it's kind of your Fortnites and that. It's almost more important that people have got a certain skin or a certain rare item than it is how good they are at the game, which is an odd thing. It's a new generation, but I just find it weird. I mean, I've tried Fortnite a handful of times, and every time I play 1 or 2 rounds and I uninstall it because I am horrendous at that game. You have to have such good sort of Twitch muscle memory to play that game that I just don't have the time to develop it anymore. But it is at the same time a title that I wonder how well it would do on Stadia, purely to bring a player base in. That has to be a thing that people at Google are looking at and being like, well, it's a game that's been out for a while. It's not going to make the same level of impact as it would have done had Stadia come out closer to when Fortnite became a thing, but it's going down in players now, right? It's not at the same level that it used to be. And if you introduce Stadia as a platform to play it on, you open up that ability to not have to play the mobile version of that game on the move. You can give people the full game on the move. And that would, I feel like for Google alone, that's just dollar signs in the eyes, right?
Can I jump on here first? Firstly, the Fortnite wasn't on the table because Fortnite's a free-to-play game. They were just dollar sales, as when you had to go to the shop and buy them. That's why Fortnite isn't even in that list you had. This is the reason why I do think Fortnite should come, and all three of the games will. Google is in a unique position here, because they can get money loads of ways. They're going to get it. If Fortnite comes, they're going to get a cut for people in the microtransactions. Yes, they may have to negotiate a different rate. Chase brought that up on his show yesterday, wasn't it, Chase? And then you're going to have people streaming it, so they're going to get money that way. Then you're going to have people saying, I'm only Fortnite streamer I can think on top of my head is Ninja, but obviously he's not going to come. But say a big Fortnite streamer comes on, give me $10, I'll stream with you, or you can join my game and crowd play. They're going to get the money there as well. There's just going to be so many ways Google is going to get their money with free-to-play games. You have to think a lot bigger, and to see it has to happen. Otherwise, they're just going to cause themselves so much difficulty. So I know Chase is probably going to disagree with me here somewhat. I'm not jumping in for you.
Well, no, I mean, the if you're talking about like free to play and what their long-term goals are here, I think, and I want to be real careful because we may get into a rabbit hole on the free to play thing, and I want to be careful not to hijack Tommy's points here, because I know he's got a what we were talking about, but I think that free to play is a tough situation, and it comes down to dollars and cents. It comes down to, if you lock it behind pro, that's how Google makes their money. If they don't lock it behind pro, how does Google make their money? And the platform, or not platform, but the publishers of those games have always been very unwilling to play ball when it comes to cuts of those microtransactions. And Google has been pretty adamant. Their minimum share spot as far as taking dollars and cents is usually around 30 or 35%. So that's not something that you're ever going to see those publishers be willing to play ball on. They're not going to go for that number. And then if you don't do that, then what's the next option? Well, I mean, I talked about this with Germani and Brian on my Saturday morning Stadia talk about how, I know people hate to hear this, but it's just a reality. They may have to do some type of advertising on loading screens. It's not ideal. It's not something that I would be energetic about. I'll be very honest with you. But I'm just looking at it from a business lens. You got to look at it from a dollars and cents perspective of how does it make sense from that. And then to go to your other point, Duncan, about and correct me if I'm wrong, you were talking about about what the game plan is moving forward about streamers and them trying to cater to that. You actually swung me towards your line of thought a couple of days ago. I actually have talked about this, that I think Google, the acquisition of Activision Blizzard, is a twofold process by them. One is they know that they can capture, or they knew that in negotiations with them that they could say, look what happens if we partner with you and we put a play now button underneath your esports streams. How much money is that then going to bring to that developer? We're talking some serious cash. Then on top of that, you then look at what does it do for streamers? And if streamers want to monetize this, listen, that's a much broader conversation. And I think we're all really going to differ on that. I really do. I think we're all not going to necessarily agree of whether we think that should be monetized, meaning locking behind paywalls and stuff. but it is a reality that will come to fruition because it's something that, again, it gives that as an option. And that's going to be very competitive against like Twitch, for example. I mean, just think about that. If Amazon's not fully fleshed out in the market yet with their game streaming platform, and a streamer has a choice to go over to Google, and they know that Stadia is offering those Play Now features with crowd play, and they can get money off of that, oh man. I mean, it's a compelling argument. And that's really, at the end of the day, Duncan's right. A lot of these moves are long-term chess piece plays. They are setting the groundwork for a hyper or super, I was going to say super highway, but a
big connection. It's all going to be connected.
Yeah, it's like a toll road or an expressway. There you go. They're setting the table for this, and they know in 5 to 7 years that we're going to be in a much different spot. And I've said this earlier yesterday about the xCloud and Phil Spencer, and God love him. You know, he really truly believes that cloud gaming's 10 years away. He's dead wrong, and he's going to be proven wrong on this.
I feel like he already knows that, and he just can't turn around and say, you know what, I was wrong so quickly.
I know, but you know what I mean by him. When he says things, and this is one of the things that I do appreciate about Phil Spencer, even though I'm not a Microsoft person, he wears his heart on his sleeve. He's a very genuine person. When he says something, he genuinely means it. He's not bluffing. So it was a misstatement, and I think it's going to come back to haunt him. And I think it's actually going to come back to haunt them in 2021, because if the Series X underperforms, and I made the prediction that it is, what's going to be the tell is if they get into double and triple digits behind PlayStation, it's going to be a quick shift. It doesn't mean they're going to stop selling the Series X, but don't think for a second they're not going to go, well, you know what? We realize now that cloud gaming is really where the marketplace is shifting. Don't put it past Microsoft to do that. They've done this before. They have shifted on things left and right. Sorry, that's completely off kilter and off track of where we were at, but it kind of flew with what was being said. So sorry.
No, that's fine. And you know what? The advertising thing, I've had many discussions with. I think anybody that believes that Google are not going to build advertising into Stadia is crazy. Is not the word I want to use, but it is crazy, especially in base. I don't think you can get away from that. You're going to get advertising in base sooner or later. And I think it's going to be fairly discreet. I don't think you're going to get big adverts taken over your screen. It's going to be probably almost the size of when you get to the end of your YouTube video and you get the little box pop up with play next or suggesting something.
What I see happening is in-game.
Well,
In-game billboards. There you go. There's your... It's going to be built into their games from the ground up. That's where I see it going, and it's going to be tailored to you. So if you're streaming on YouTube, you better watch out. You haven't been went down any naughty sites.
now,
Fair play, Duncan. Fair play.
I've actually I've spoken to Chase about. I can't remember what show it was. I think it might have been you and Eddie, and I was only in chat. But I remember saying to you about I can see it going that way, Duncan, personally, and I actually don't mind it, but I have a weird reason for this, and that is back in the day I used to play City of Heroes, the MMO, and that was I believe that this is true. I haven't Googled it, and I'm not going to. That was the first game ever to actually include dynamic billboard adverts in the game, and you barely even notice them because you're in a city, going around a city. You would expect to see that kind of thing anyway, right? You see it wherever you walk around now. So why would it be any different for it to be in the game? The difference is whether or not they go down the Ready Player One Sixers route of trying to sell your viewpoint as a platform to advertise stuff on, or if it's actually designed in that these spaces are going to be used for advertising. And like you say, it's going to be tailored because every advert you see within Google is it's a tracked cookie change. So you're going to get that. And obviously they are going to have to be on the ball with what is getting popped up, because you also don't want to be advertising competitors in Stadia, right? You don't want to see anything on the Xbox. You don't want to see anything on the PlayStation. You only want to see the game. And that could be a bit of an issue because people are going to want to advertise in Stadia regardless, but they're not going to want to advertise by removing things at the same time. And I'll be really interested to see how they kind of manage that. But it's kind of the reverse of what we've seen happen with Stadia, actually, right? With Doom. For a while, we had all this stuff on Stadia on Doom Eternal, and then all of a sudden we started getting these sort of infographics come through where the Stadia badge was missing, and everyone was like, what's going on here? What's happened? People didn't like it, and that's going to be the same, but the wrong way around. If you're only seeing games that are on Stadia, people aren't going to like that, and they're going to try really hard to pull that advertising their way instead.
Can I just mention a wee point which is related to that? Last year, in the Champions League, Pro Evolution Soccer, you had the Champions League in it, and you played on the Xbox. Who sponsors the Champions League?
I'm going to take a guess now and say that it's PlayStation.
And believe it or not, that ad was actually in the game on the Xbox version. So it may not be completely out from the lines of possibility, but they'll probably have to do it by the ads in game if it goes down that route. So I'm just putting it out there. So there may be ways around it.
There's, the tough part about, and I'll be very honest. I think the advertising space is a really volatile space, and it's very hard to predict and project. And it's one of those ones where, for me, I find it hard to talk about it because you just don't know what type of deals are being done on it. It's not as clean cut as like other parts of the business realm. Because one company may say, I don't care that it's on our platform, hence like you talked about with the soccer example, but then there's other examples where publishers are like, you better not put anything on ours. It's really tough to project that stuff. And I don't know how this is something that we'll have to watch really closely, because I do think advertising has a major point to play in where we're heading. Because it's almost like the Wild West. It opens things up to new possibilities that we haven't potentially thought of. I mean, I made the joke about someone being in game and walking into a Pizza Hut on the game, and they order the pizza virtually, and then it shows up at their door. Now, I mean, granted, we already have apps for this, so it's not like that big of a deal. But if you're in a game and you're ordering a freaking pizza, I mean, it's kind of nuts. It kind of goes back to the point you made, Tommy, about Ready Player One. You're doing things in a virtual world that then translate into the real world, like the purchasing of those suits and things that you see in that movie. So it's just crazy stuff. One thing that where is it at? I think it went further up in the chat. Dan actually put on here, Tommy, about the adverts whilst the game is loading, perhaps. And I think that goes back to what we were talking about a little bit earlier. I think there's going to be some. I don't see that happening on paid versions of games, but I think I'm not, and I have to be careful. I'm not promoting or saying that this is right. I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm just speaking from a factual perspective. I think it's something we're going to have to wrestle with. And I think it is something that will potentially rear its head at some point. And then we as gamers, this larger community, whether it's Stadia or somewhere else, we're going to have to grapple with the fact, is that what we want as consumers? And we're going to have to tell the companies, no, we don't, or maybe we are okay with it in this, and maybe we're not okay with it here.
Here's a question just to broaden this out a wee tiny bit. Will they slow down the games on base if they're going to put ads in it? Because with the SSDs, games are just loading like that. If you're would they put a timer in to say, instead of it loading up in 10 seconds, will it load up in 30 seconds so the ad is there while the game is loading?
I don't think that they're going to do videos and stuff. I think more what you're going to see like just plain billboard adverts if they do something like that. I think that is a killer. If they do like what they do on YouTube with the countdown of different advertisements, that's a no-go. They're going to get in serious trouble over that. Brian brought up a good point. Club Stadia, I think it was Brian, about the 2K. If you remember that, the 2K situation, they were doing ads and they got crucified over that. I mean, literally, it was like pitchforks, torches. They were coming for them. So that's why I'm saying, like, this is so hard to project and predict. I can't see them going that over the top, but I do see a potential place where we might see like and I'm trying to say this very loosely, a billboard type of advert where it's just, it loads up, you see that for a second, and then it's there, and then it's gone, and then you're in the game. That's what I think we could potentially see. That makes the most sense to me without potentially making someone running for the hills or just losing their absolute mind on it. And even then, I think that's pushing the envelope. And that's why I said it's really going to be interesting to see if that happens, what the gaming community says about it. Because I don't know. I don't know what the end result of that's going to be, depending on how it's done. My gut tells me people are going to be pissed, but I just don't know.
With Kevin's wee point there about will it pop up when you're shooting? No, it's not going to happen that, but we may have some more.
No.
It's going to be built into games. You're going to have it when you're loading, the screens are loading up. Just think, the perfect game, you could put ads into the game for the base version, or I think Google's going to probably do it in your own games. It's a game like Watch Dogs Legion, where it's going to be in London, you have the billboards. You couldn't stick ads in the middle of Red Dead Redemption 2. So you might see a shift to different types of games, to like more cityscapes, so they can start getting that if they're really after the money.
Absolutely, and I don't know if everybody's seen it or not. I know I tweeted it, and it was also put up on StadiaSource, and that was the BBC interview that was done by Ubisoft, where they actually brought people in. They brought the presenters and the interviewee into the game itself and done the interview from within the game engine, and it was phenomenal. I was out shopping actually with the missus when I seen it, and it was just on the TV where we were. I couldn't hear the sound, which was disappointing, but I was like, what's this? And I seen it was on Click, and I was like, right, well, I need to go home. I need to go and watch this because this is interesting. And then to actually hear what they're talking about and to be able to see that that's pure mocap, but like it's like live mocap. That's kind of weird. It's almost a little bit scary actually that was an eye-opener to me, that our media is not going to be the same very soon. We are going to have, I mean, like, people make a real living career out of YouTube right now, doing essentially what we're doing now. But there are going to be people doing this as like a full-time job, where they're going to live in a digital world and we're going to watch them from within a digital world. And people are going to, again, not to keep bringing it up, but Ready Player One, the film is obviously quite different from the book. The book is much better, by the way, but what you don't get from the book is the sense of people walking around in essentially an MMO that is a real life thing. And they do a quite a clever sketch of a guy that spends all of his money in game and then loses a competition, and that was all of his real life money, and his instant reaction is to run and jump out of the skyscraper building block that he works in. And it's like, that kind of thing could be coming. Like, microtransactions are a pain now. Imagine in 10 years time when there are going to be paywalls in certain forms of game where you just can't access something that is a real part of the game because you need to buy something. I mean, I guess DLC is kind of that now, right? Certain games, at least, there are big areas of a game that's hidden behind a DLC wall. But that's going to get so much worse. And the fluidity of a platform in the cloud, where that has no toll on the person other than your credit card details are linked to your account. Do you want to go to this place? Just say yes, and we'll let you there now. That's a whole new issue to go along with advertising, right? Because they're going to be funneling you towards this door that's been sort of glowing and locked, but all you have to do is actually say, yeah, I'm okay with spending some money to open that door, and away you go. How many times can they do that before people start questioning, is this gambling of a sort? like loot boxes and stuff.
I mean, all these things are very interesting, thought-provoking pieces, and I think the reality is cloud. This is why I think that this is such a radical change. Cloud gaming is. I've used the example before as a child, going from cartridge medium to the optical media to downloads. This is now a radical change beyond that, and this really is the Wild West. It really is. There's so many different potential pathways on where this can go, from, like you said, from advertising, from a whole bunch of different places. So
I'm just going to bring up a bit of Ready Player One here. We're getting very, very close to the turning point here for Ready Player One to becoming a full-featured sort of thing. As I mentioned earlier, we have Shadow. What can you do in Shadow now? You can hook up your VR to Shadow. Oh. Yeah, it's still a bit all depending where you are. And if you look what Facebook has just announced a number of months ago, they have basically announced their Oasis. It is called Facebook Horizon, and it's going to be a place. Obviously, it's not as good as Ready Player One. It's in the very, very, very early sort of days of that. But it's basically you go there, you be your own character, you can make your own games. It is just going to expand out. So it is. We are approaching, you could say, a golden age or a scary age of gaming, where everything is just going to merge into one. With Stadia, we're going to get games which are going to be just so immersive that you're going to have to play them 24/7 just to keep up, because there's no downloads. It's just going to be absolutely mind-boggling what's going to happen in the next 5 years.
I completely agree. I bought the Rift, and I bought the Rift probably about 2-3 months before the Rift S and the Quest launched, and I immediately sold my Rift and bought the Quest, and that was a revolution. I can't even put into words what the difference is when you take out all of the wires and you are no longer connected to anything at all, and you have this thing strapped to your head. And the number of times I would be doing something and playing a game where if you played it on a PC or on a TV and you had peripheral vision, you would look at it and be like, this belongs in like the NES sort of days. But having that strapped to your face and being the only thing you can see, your mind does not have the capability to say, this is not real. I mean, you can look at things and see that they're not photorealistic, but the Plank game is a perfect example. Everybody I know that played that game, every single person was scared that they were going to fall off the plank. And it works a lot better when you get an actual piece of wood and make people stand on it so that they can feel with their feet that there is an edge. Nobody can play that for the first couple of times and be like, well, it's fine because I've got like less than half an inch before I'm on a solid floor again. Your brain just doesn't do it. And you know what? I sold mine because I ended up using it to watch Amazon Prime and Netflix and everything in bed. And I was like, this is a £400 TV that I have strapped to my head at this point, and I will get one again. I really will. I was so blown away with what that could do. And my thoughts were at the time that the fact that you can't tether it, which you now can, was a bit of a downside on it. And the other thing was, like, everyone was saying, like, it's never going to work in the cloud because of the latency issues and so on. And having tried some earlier VR experiences that made me feel really sick, I seen what they were saying. So I was like, you know what, I'm just going to pass on it for now, and I'll buy back into that at the next iteration. But man, they had Oasis, by the way, on it then, like an official Oasis game. And it was not good. I was really disheartened by that because it just didn't even remotely give you that feel. But I did get to try out a Facebook thing where you could go in and you could see an avatar, very cartoony, but there was hardly anybody in it. So I never really explored it. But you could see even at that point that they were getting to this point where you could go and hang out with your real life friends in VR and chat and go to the cinema and watch something on Netflix or something like that, and look around and see an actual cinema of people sat in it, or their avatar of being sat there in it, and even doing games and stuff. I was watching people on Twitch in VR where I was sat in a camp experience with like a fire in front of me, the stars in the sky, and it was next level.
It really is. So the gaming landscape is changing so quickly. It's scary now, and we're on the cusp of something massive, which I don't think we even know what's going to be coming. I think it's going to just blow us away. We've got Oculus doing their thing, we've got Stadia doing theirs, and I think just don't know what's going to blow up.
I can tell you one thing that we are going to see, and we have a pretty good indication of it, is if you go back and you look at some interviews for Stadia with JJ, and the one that comes to mind specifically is when Jack Buser did his interview with Kinda Funny Games, and they were talking about how you had EverQuest, and those of you that know EverQuest, it was an MMO game, and it had regional servers. So it was a living, breathing world, but it was never where you were with the same, like you couldn't, your friend, unless you were on the same servers, you'd never come across each other. What I think that Stadia is potentially working towards, and Jade Raymond then was the additional layer. She's almost like the icing or the cherry on top, the way that she explained it, is they're working towards a living, breathing MMO. And the beauty of Stadia is you can take server blades, right? You can leverage 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 of them and create a living, breathing world that is 24/7 and can capture hundreds of thousands, if not millions of players with server blades that they interact with that server and they bounce out. They interact with that server and they bounce out. That, I think, is where we're about to go. And if that is, if what was alluded to or if what was intimated comes to fruition, and it's a game that works, and that's the key, works, effectively, that I think could be the game that, Stadia, I think, could be successful in the beginning. We've talked about all this before, but I think that is the game that changes everything. I think it changes everything for Stadia. I think it changes everything for what we know as gaming, because that is something that has never, in the history of mankind, this is a fact, has never been done. Yeah. Now, again, EverQuest was done, but it was never in one singular server with hundreds of thousands of players, all of them together at once. Never. It was never possible, because you can't leverage that much space. You can't leverage that much interconnectivity with a pipeline. But what does the Google Cloud do? It gives us that ability to do that. And I always get giddy when I talk about this, because that's the type of game that I am looking forward to. Not that I want to live in it 24/7, but it makes it interesting, because then you do have to be on top of things. You have to be up with everybody else. Your friend could say, "Hey, did you get on at 7? Did you see that such and such player had this quest for you?" And you could only get it in that hour. Like that's the kind of stuff that's going to make things it's going to change it. And that's something that, again, me being as old as I am, and I guess I'm just talking like I'm a fossil, but I'm really not. But that's something my mind can't comprehend. I literally, like, even talking about it right now, I go back to what we talked about, the Game Boys and the Game Gears, and my mind cannot comprehend that this is possible, that it can actually happen. And it excites me that this is the promise of what, I think we get down on Stadia for a lot of things, but this is something that we should all be excited about. The promise of that type of a game is mind-blowing. It's mind-blowing. It's literally mind-blowing that is something that could potentially be a reality in a very short couple of years.
Yeah. It will be. Sorry, Duncan, that was all I wanted to say.
No, all I was going to say is, and it will be never ending. always adding. You don't have to worry about anything like that. Server space isn't an issue. Or hard drive space, I mean, isn't an issue. You can just keep on adding blocks, and yeah, it's going to be the MMO which goes on a lifetime and can always be added to. It is going to be absolutely amazing.
Yeah, and I mean, I think we're pretty much getting to the point where we can wrap this up now, because I know some folks are going to drop out shortly for the Super Bowl anyway. But I also think that maybe this is a subject that we could probably spend double the amount of time we've already spent.
Exactly.
It's clearly something that's passionate for, I think, for most people that enjoyed gaming anyway, the ability to get into these situations where I used to love playing MMOs. I've lost count of how many I've actually played now, but certainly they just offer something that a lot of other games can't offer you, especially a single player narrative game. You can't get the same experience out of it. And equally, multiplayer games tend to be a set sort of session, so you don't, and then it resets completely, so you're never going to get it out of those. There's that mix of mashing the two things together on a level that is never, rightly said by Chase, it's never been done before. I mean, what's the biggest WoW platform? I've never played WoW, so that's one of the only ones I haven't done because I feared for my life. But
it was regional servers as well on that one too. So I mean, it's limited. It's just because of the network pipeline and the server capacity just not being able to take on that type of overload.
Yeah, and I mean, even now, I believe that probably I guess it'd be difficult to say now because it's run for so long that so many members would not actually be active anymore. So the player base is going to be very difficult to say what it really is. But that would be like what, maybe a town's worth potentially in 5 years' time. You could have just one section of a game hold the entire player base of WoW, and then have the entire Stadia community that exists now in the tutorial section, right? We could just literally get to this point where we have millions of people playing the same instance of one game. And how do you go on from there? Because that game's never going to end.
That's the crazy part. I mean, and I think that's where the bookend is, like you said, where we're kind of at like the stopgap, because we could go for hours, but the future has not been written yet. You know, I sound like from what is that, from Back to the Future. We don't know, and I think we're all going to be along for this ride, you know, together to see what the future holds. It's really interesting.
One question: do we hear about it this year, or even a hint?
No, I don't think so. I think just to be attentive to everybody's time, I don't think we hear anything really about it. I think my guess is the earliest would be mid-year 2021, you know, some type of a trailer, you know, but no, because I mean, you got to understand that type of, and I know you guys know this, so I don't want to preach to the choir, but that type of underpinning is a huge task. That is a massive game that would have to be built with so many layers. It's going to take time. The Matrix.
I agree. The Matrix is the next step, right? Except we don't actually need to stick a cable in the back of our head. We just strap a screen on our face instead. It's much nicer. But yeah, it's got to be, I reckon, next year. I think hopefully the message for Stadia is just to onboard people, give them everything that they're getting from whatever their current medium is. Well, the majority of what they're getting. I don't want every game on Stadia. There's no need for it. But once they've showed that they've been really serious about bringing this platform out, and they're really serious about working with developers and helping them change to a new, it's not even a new platform to me. It's a new infrastructure that's not been seen before. Once people realize that, and they truly start harnessing what the potential for cloud is, that's the point where I think we start seeing these people go, right, well, now we know it works. Let's just do something that makes people look at the very latest console version and compare it to a Sega and just be like, bang, that's done. We've killed it. It's gone. Everything from this point forward, this is the benchmark. And I think your Microsofts, your Sonys, there's no way they don't have a team working on whatever their cloud is going to be in the future, even if it's hybrid, whatever, because not everybody's going to want to go down this cloud route for now. But it's just got to be the thing. It's got to be the way it goes. For me, I think the majority of people are going to be in agreement with that as well, that cloud is just infinitely scalable. So there is no argument against it because it does everything your traditional method does quicker and without locking yourself into a hardware box, because even the most technical people are not going to be wanting to take apart these console boxes and change things. Otherwise, they'll buy a PC. That is the next step from that. And yeah, I'm really excited to see what we get this year. I think it is going to be a really good year. I think we're going to get a lot of new attention. I think we're going to stop getting the stick pointed at us for being fanboys of something that just works. There have certainly been PR issues that we know about, and Google have got faults, but the service works. At the end of the day, that's the main thing. As long as I don't come here one day and type in Stadia.com or click my link and it comes up and it doesn't work, then I can't agree with these people. And it's not on a fanboy issue. It was the same with Windows 10, Game Pass for Windows 10. It worked. And then one day I tried to load it and it wouldn't work. That was the first day I had an issue with that platform. And it's just not happened yet.
To answer my own question, I think we will. But I think it's going to be a Metroid Prime sort of tease. Just the name of the game or something and just black it out just to know that they're working on something. So that's where I'm going to go with that. It's just going to be the hint of a tease just to get people talking and speculating on what it might be. This year, I think, I don't know, I may have misplaced faith in Stadia here. I think we've got some surprises coming this year, which are going to showcase the whole shebang. And we're going to have our minds blown on some of the simple wee stuff, which is just going to be in its infancy, like the state share, the crowd play. I think we're going to get something really, really good this year with Stadia.
Yeah, I do think we'll get some smaller titles. It won't be the big one, but there'll be some smaller games, I think, that come out of Stadia Games and Entertainment. So I do agree with that.
And you know what? I hope you're right, though, Duncan. I hope they do it this year, because at the end of the day, nobody wants it to wait longer than we have to. I don't know. I just think that they want to prove that this is a real thing and that they're being serious about getting anybody that's interested in working with them on board. And I know from what we've seen when everyone was trying to dig before they actually got the release on the developers portal, and that the information that was there was a little bit generic, but at the same time, I felt like had I had enough knowledge to be able to do something that I could potentially get to Stadia, I felt like I could reach out and that there would be somebody there that would talk to me about it. And I think this is where the big thing with Unity access is going to come in. I've dabbled and played with Unity quite a lot over the last couple of years. And whilst I've never built something that I would give to somebody to play, I could see from what I know about Unity, if I really went back to it and spent a year, I could probably get to the point where we could have almost like an arcade section of Stadia, like Xbox used to do. That was a brilliant feature that I have no idea why they let it go. The Xbox Arcade was awesome. I loved that. I probably spent almost as much time playing some of those indie titles as I did playing anything AAA. And I really hope that Google take that, because that, again, I have a Switch, and one of the best things about that is not playing the AAA titles that exist on that are ported across. It's playing the smaller games that play really well and that most people don't even hear about because they're not AAA. It's an issue in the gaming industry that people believe that if it's not a mainstream title that it's not good, and it quite often goes the other way for me. I've played a number of AAA titles where I've gone, God, I don't even want to play this thing anymore, and I've only been playing it for 2 hours. It's
See, this is where I slightly disagree with you. I want the indie games on the system, no question. However, Google has to be smart here. They don't want to fill out their library in the short term with. I have to be careful. I mean, in no disrespect to any of these games, filler games just to get on the system. I think they need to be, for this first year, a bit more selective to make sure the games come on the work and this more or less showcase the title or the platform itself. Open it up later on, I have absolutely no problem with, but I think if they open it up to everybody in the short term, it could actually cause more damage than it would help.
Yeah, actually, I do agree with that. Maybe I'm just thinking sort of more long term, the fact that you could have these smaller titles. But yeah, for the first year, maybe just concentrate on getting some hard work titles put in, so that you're getting the hype trains that come along with these are able to be a part of the Stadia base as well. I do agree with that. I think, yeah, maybe more long term. I mean, I certainly wouldn't mind like the Cupheads and that sort of thing coming. That would be fine by me. And Get Packed is probably the #1 game that I'm looking forward to that isn't a AAA title at the moment. I really, really am looking forward to that. So I hope we do find out something soon. I know you've been trying hard, Duncan. Sorry, that didn't come out the right way around. Trying very hard, Duncan, to get some information from them, and I have as well. I've spoken to a number of their developers already, and there's no getting in anywhere. They're just not giving anything away. It's Coatsink must have some really good embargoes. But anyway, guys, I think this is a good place to wrap up. I know Super Bowl is a big thing, so I don't want to step on anybody's toes there. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for both Duncan and Chase for coming on tonight. I know it was very short notice. I just had the spur to get something out and do this before it got lost in a lot of what we've got coming up this month. And I'll let you guys just introduce your own shows and your social medias again, just so that everybody can make sure that they've got all your details if they haven't got you already.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm One to Escape on Twitter. I write for StadiaSource, and I'm the rocket that everybody makes fun of, and I'm the one who causes all the trouble.
Yeah, they're gonna send you a restraining order real soon. You can find me. My YouTube channel is StadiaTalk, and just very quickly, it's just a channel where it's looking at things from the business side of the house, and to kind of help provoke thought in regards to Stadia. So StadiaTalk, and then you can also follow me on Twitter. Tommy has a wonderful scrolling message down here, but it's at Phantom UFC Fan. And that's it.
Brilliant. And I'm just going to remove these just to put this one up here again. It's not as big as I'd like to make that actually, but 15th of February, we have got a really special event coming, guys. I'm going to put some more details in the description below after the video as well. But we have got Stadia's Super Saturday coming on the 15th, and it is going to be a day that is just full to the rafters of Stadia content from all of your favorite content creators. We're going to have mashups, collaborations, gameplay, open mics, interviews, just literally every kind of media that we can give you from Stadia, then we're going to do it. So if you don't know about what it is yet, then head on over to StadiaSource.com. We've got plenty of coverage there. We haven't given obviously schedules out or anything yet, but that's not going to be far away now from being completed and released to you guys. So please do make sure that you follow both Duncan and Chase. Head over to StadiaSource. We are affiliated with them anyway, and make sure.
I just wanted to say real quick, congratulations, Tommy, on the article with StadiaSource and for joining their team. I think it's a big get, and you do an amazing job. And I'm again, just congratulations. I wanted to say that before you closed out the stream, man.
No worries. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be a part of the team as well. It was a move that I didn't see coming, and had I not made the mistake of maybe not being Stadia Arcadia solely, then it probably would never have come around anyway. But no, thanks very much. Right, guys, I think that is it. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this one up now. Apologies that we haven't gone through the chat, by the way. I have read all of the comments. We just, as you can see, we're at 2.25 hours now, and we haven't even stopped to do messages. That's crazy. I feel like we've been doing this for 10 minutes. Yeah, thank you very much for stopping by and joining, and for being active in the chat. Next time, I promise I will make sure we set time aside to go through all of the comments. And yeah, thanks very much, guys. It's been an honor, and until next time.
Take it easy, everybody.
Bye.